Hi, welcome to Cass County today. You may or may not recognize the guy sitting beside me, but he's from Atlanta. He used to work here for a long time. His name is Sonny Long, and he's written a book titled Among Murderers, and the book will be coming out in just a week or so, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that. So, I will not do justice to explaining the book. So what got you interested? What made you start this book? Where's the background, the backstory, and all of that?
Well, Friday, the 27th of January, was the 20th anniversary of the murder case. Jerry Fay, 29, Jessica, 11, and Mackenzie, 2, Butts, were murdered that day. I was a reporter. I had started the Pine Country Bulletin newspaper.
I remember that.
The year before, so it was less than a year after I'd started that little paper, and this was, of course, my first big story.
Big story,
right?
yes.
Big story. So I was there on scene that morning. Of
Oh,
course,
you were?
couldn't get close. They'd already roped it off and cordoned it off and everything. But yeah, I went to the scene that day, and it's just over the course of what transpired. No arrest was made for several months, and then after arrest was made, it was Kevin Haley, the son of a deputy sheriff, and there was a big controversy about that. And I think it was June of that year before he actually had his court date, the probable cause hearing, and his bond was lowered, and he was set free.
Yeah.
And for 17 years.
Yeah.
So somewhere during the course of that time, I promised Jerry Fay's mom, Lynette, that I wouldn't let her kids be forgotten, and that's basically the genesis of the book. That same week, my father died. This was on a Monday. My father died that Thursday.
Really?
So that whole week is just kind of, sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
If I think about one, I kind of think about the
Yeah.
other. Think about that one, I think about Dad,
Yeah.
So it's kind of sticks out. And so I worked on I actually wrote a novel based on this story at first, a 400-page manuscript, mainly because either Kevin and or his mom, Kathy Weaver, were free, and I didn't want to tell the true story as long as either one of them weren't in jail, because basically I was afraid of them.
Well, and not only that, but you might have influenced somebody should they ever come to trial. So yeah.
But I couldn't really get any interest in the novel getting published. So when Kevin was finally indicted in 2007 and arrested for the murders, and Kathy was in jail too for a murder that she committed, I said, well, this true story is more interesting and more bizarre really than anything I could make up. So let's go back and recapture the true story.
And so that's when you started. Okay, go back to the day that it happened.
Okay.
When you got there, you said it's all roped off. They were on a little trailer house, right on the corner.
Walnut Street.
Yes. What did you perceive the scene to be?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure it was somber and dark, but
there was a lot of milling around. There were still people, I guess, law enforcement, probably doing fingerprints and stuff. And seemed to be a lot more than there should have been, but I addressed that too. Of course, people were milling around trying to figure out what was going on, and I guess I was more excited than anything at that time, not really realizing the impact of what had happened. Because of the adrenaline rush of
that's what I was going to say.
First big murder case and stuff.
Well, the first one in Atlanta in how long?
I'm not sure.
It could have been, years and years.
Yeah, but of course after that, the probable cause hearing was quite interesting. Expert witnesses came in, the law enforcement testified, and of course toward the end there, at one point, then District Attorney the late Neil Birmingham. Slapped his hand on the table and said, I'm on the wrong side, which caused quite a stir.
I don't remember that.
Yes, he did. And I actually came back to Atlanta in 2010 and interviewed Neil.
You did?
And asked him about that specifically. So to find out what he said, read the book.
You'll have to buy the book.
Right. And it's Among Murderers and Madness.
Oh, okay. I didn't say the title.
That's okay. That's all right. And murderers, plural, because it not only talks about the Butts case and Kevin, but also quite a bit about Kathy Weaver and the murder case she was involved in.
Well, tell us a little bit about that too, because this is a mother and a son.
Right. Kathy was married to a man named Mike Scott, interestingly, and he was found dead. And I don't want to mess my years up, so I'm not going to try, but that death was ruled a suicide for 2 years.
Okay.
Until her other son, Chad Weaver, went to the cops and said, Mom killed this guy. Yes. It wasn't a suicide. He wore a wire and got her to
admit to it. Yes.
Basically talk about that. But the relationship between Kevin and Kathy's influence over him are all intertwined and talked about in the book. So it's going
to be a great book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just cannot wait to get it. I'm so disappointed you didn't have one today.
Well,
but they'll be out in just days.
Today's is more about remembering
them.
The Butts family.
Yes. 20 years ago. Wow. How old would the mom be?
this year, when her birthday, I think her birthday's in September, she turned 50 this year. So
Jeez.
there's also a chapter about, there was a time there for a couple of years, some internet discussion forums sprang up on the case
Oh,
called
really?
Web Sleuths. Yeah, there was a Butts discussion forum there, and it got kind of wild and woolly there, because on the internet, you know, you can
Oh, yeah, you can get
say and do
anything, yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So it got kind of wild and woolly, and I talk a lot about, you know, the lady that actually put that up was also had one for the John Benet Ramsey case. So,
Oh.
but it got kind of interesting there. People. It kind of got away from the case and more like into the personalities and name calling and stuff. But that, you know, that's also addressed in the book. As are the memorial services. There was a memorial service almost every year for a number of years.
Yes, there was.
And we revisit those in the book. Always very somber, always very, you know, sad occasions. We also talk about other suspects.
There were others.
Well, sure there were. There was other evidence there too. So.
Get the book.
Yeah.
He's just teasing us.
So
yeah.
we talk a little bit about, you know, who those people were and why they may or may not have been excluded in the end, DNA testing. And DNA testing is also talked about quite a bit. From 1992 to 2007, some tremendous changes and improvements were made in DNA testing. Things that were tested back in 1992 were retested later on, and things that weren't even tested in 92 were tested and kept coming back to Kevin. So.
That's so interesting. What I guess surprises me is that he walked free, like you said, for 17 years. 17 years.
We also discuss the plea agreement. You know, he pled guilty to killing Jerry Fay, but not the two kids. We talk about why I actually have corresponded with Kevin from prison, and Kathy from prison, quite a bit with Kathy.
Now, where's she at in prison? Where's she at?
Gatesville.
Okay.
Women's prison in Gatesville.
And then where's Kevin?
Kevin's actually in Angola and Louisiana for that that attempted murder in
Louisiana.
In Louisiana, which is talked about also.
So when you mentioned it just a second ago about the mother and son relationship, that's going to be terribly interesting. How the mother could influence a son to kill, not only once, possibly an attempted murder. You just said, but you know there may be others we may not know about. My goodness, how a mother could do that. Do you go into her background any of the home that she came from, of how she might have turned that way?
A little bit, mostly about Kevin and Chad, about their upbringing with her and their grandparents, whom they lived with quite a bit. But Kathy tells a lot in her own words. In fact, there's a chapter called "In Her Own Words."
Oh, really?
Because that's really what ended up being her ultimate demise, was her talking on that tape about that murder. So there's a whole chapter devoted to her. So we'll learn quite a bit more about her than most people knew, probably.
Oh, I can't wait! I can't wait to read it. Now, is there a difference between Chad and Kevin?
Well, yeah.
A marked difference? I mean, like, is there?
Oh, you mean in their
demeanors and in their personalities and in their behaviors?
Well, if you believe what people tell you about Kevin, he's not the kind of guy that would do such a thing. Whereas Chad was always the wild one. But
really?
That's
the word on the street, huh?
Yeah.
Gonna be interesting again to see then. Well, tell us a few of the chapter titles. He's got some here.
We'll just, of course, This Isn't Little League Anymore is titled that because I came here as sports editor of the Citizens Journal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when the murders happened, this wasn't Little League anymore. So it's big leagues, actually.
Yeah.
Murders in Smallville, which is murders in a small town and how it affected the town.
I'll pause there for just a second, because we are a small town. We're not equipped to handle murders, are we? Right. I mean, I'm sure our police department and forensic people at that time just had no clue, did they?
That's why they called in the Texarkana forensic folks, and I'm not I don't want to say anything bad about them, but there were some things that probably could have been done differently at the crime scene, in hindsight.
Well, hindsight is 20/20. So.
Well, for instance, it came out in the probable cause hearings. Now, something I'm just making up. They asked the defense attorney if they had dusted the doorknobs for fingerprints, and they didn't. And you know, well, there's too many people coming in and out. You wouldn't have gotten anything. Well, do it anyway and find out.
Yeah, just check it.
So just little things like that. So.
Okay, so what else?
Okay, there's two chapters called "And Justice for All" with a question mark, and that's the probable cause hearing, because that was I think it was 4 days in June of '92, and it was basically the evidence presented against Kevin, and then of course he had Doug Mulder as his defense attorney, and Mulder was pretty famous in the Dallas area. The movie The Thin Blue Line, Doug Mulder's there's a character in the movie based on Doug Mulder. So, and also Walker Rayleigh, the preacher that is accused of trying to kill his wife, who's still in a coma, I believe, unless she's passed away. Anyway, he was a high-profile attorney, and he came to Cass County to defend Kevin and got his bond lowered. But there's 2 chapters devoted to that.
Okay.
There's a chapter called Aftermath of Murder, which talks about petitions and lawsuits, and of course Gentleman's Quarterly came down and did an article, which is a national magazine.
I did not know that.
There was segment on the Maury Povich show. Kathy Weaver and some of Kevin's kinfolk and some of the Butts family went up to the Maury Povich show and were on TV. Inside Edition and A Current Affair both did stories on the murder, so we talk about that quite a bit. In fact, Kathy wrote me a letter telling about her experience going on the Maury Povich show, which was quite interesting. Pink Ribbons and Flickering Candles. Yeah. That's about the memorial services. If not him, then who? Of course, about the other suspects. There's several pages of photographs. Outside of the trailer, I didn't do anything graphic from the crime scene. Okay. There was no need for that. And there are some pictures of the Butts family, of course, the Butts gravesite, Kevin, Kathy, just different things for the memorial services, different photographs. There's 4 or 5 pages of photographs there. Change Lives is another chapter. I came back, like I told you, and talked to Neil Birmingham in 2010. I came back and talked to Neil to catch up with what has gone on with Police Chief Mike Scott since that time. I spent some time with Jerry Haley, Kevin's father, because he was, of course, greatly influenced by all that, what happened, and a couple of other people that we kind of catch up on and see what happened to them since 1992. Web Sleuths and World Wild Web. World Wild Web are 2 of the chapters devoted to what went on the internet for several years on these discussion forums. And there's also a chapter called Sorry Charlie, which is about Charlie Harris, who was the editor of the Citizens Journal.
Yes, I remember him.
Who could have been a great influence on the case. He actually did some things that helped with the case, and then he fell out of favor with the website, discussion forums, and kind of distanced himself. And then, of course, we know the tragedy that befell him later on down the road. So, Mama's Boys is a chapter devoted to
that's going to be a good chapter.
Kevin and Chad, and what they were like growing up and what has happened to them since then. In Her Own Words, of course, is the chapter about Kathy. Some of the letters, I probably have 6, 8, maybe 10 letters from her from prison. So, and she is not one to mince words. So it's quite an interesting chapter. Tripod of Justice is the next to last chapter, where we talk about Mark West, who was with the Atlanta Police Department, who was the one that basically rekindled the case. It was never a closed case, but he kind of went to Chief Dupree at the time and said, let me take another look at this. And Mike Dupree said, sure, go ahead. And so Mark is one of the legs of the Tripod of Justice, and then District Attorney Clint Allen, who was elected and finally brought the case to trial. And then Lisa Tanner with the Attorney General's office, who assisted Clint with the prosecution. She's the final leg in the Tripod of Justice, which without those 3 working together, Kevin would have never been convicted, probably. And then end of the line with a question mark is Kevin's plea agreement. And there's still questions out there. There's still evidence against other people. Did one person kill all 3? What do
you think? Of course, it's totally speculative.
It is totally.
But was it just one person? You think it may have been a conspiracy theory?
I think there's questions that are unanswered.
You are going to have to get the book.
Among Murderers and Madness. That's right. And again, I'm still in the final phases of finishing it up. I should know hopefully by the end of this week, first of next week, exactly where the distribution points will be, and plan on coming back and doing some book signings in the area. So.
But there'll definitely be a place here in Atlanta, maybe the library, maybe who knows where. But we will let you know where you can get your copy of the book. And I'm sure it'll be in. Will you put it in like Books A Million?
Well, that's where I'm going actually today. To go to Books A Million in Texarkana to see if just make them aware of it. And make sure they know how to order it, and they will want to, I do believe. And that's part of the reason for my trip this weekend.
Now, where do you live at? You say
I live in Victoria, Texas, which is south down by Corpus. I'm a reporter for the Victoria Advocate. This is a daily newspaper, kind of like the Gazette, on the same size and such as the Gazette. I cover the nonprofit beat and also cover 2 of the outlying counties around Victoria. Been there since November of 2005.
Oh, a long time then.
Yeah,
7 years.
Yeah, I left here in 2005. It's hard to believe.
It is.
But I'm enjoying that job, and of course taking a little time off to do this this week. So,
Well, wouldn't it be great for you and